Welcome to yet another exciting edition of your favorite Sunday morning program, Media Monitor, the show that gives you complete analysis on news that grip the headlines of this week. We're live here on the SABC News channel with myself, Alicia Jali. Thank you so much for choosing us. Our topics this morning, we start by discussing whether the alleged coup plot is anything to be concerned about and tackle how the latest Northwest protest turned out to be racial right after the nation celebrated 23 years of freedom. Is former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan publicly endorsing Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa as the next president? And finally, we delve into whether COSATU will be successful in barring the NC president from attending the Workers' Day celebrations that will be held tomorrow across the country. But we do know that, of course, COSATU has allowed the president to speak at tomorrow's rally. But first, as always, it's 900 hours. It is time to take a quick look at the news making headlines at 900 hours. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says the NC will move aggressively and quickly with implementation of radical economic transformation and addressing the land redistribution issue. Ramaphosa, also Deputy President of the party, was speaking during the second day of the NC by-election campaign out in Mutu in northern KwaZulu-Natal. He says the poor black majority of this country must also benefit from the country's economy. The Black Business Council says South Africans must be assured that the Financial Intelligence Centre Amendment Act, the FICA bill, is not used to further political goals of certain individuals. The council welcomed the long-awaited signing into law of the bill by President Jacob Zuma, which was announced yesterday. The council also urged the National Treasury and law enforcement agencies to apply the new law without fear or favour. And of course, US President Donald Trump celebrated his 100th day in office yesterday by speaking at Harrisburg in Pennsylvania, while thousands joined a mass march against his environmental policies in the capital, Washington, D.C. Trump told a Pennsylvania crowd that he was thrilled to be away from the Washington swamp. And at the same time, thousands of people surrounded the White House to protest against Trump's policies on climate change, which he has described as a Chinese hoax. And White House journalists also held their annual Black Dinner, which Trump and his staff also boycotted because of what the president said was unfair treatment by the press. All right, I'm joined this morning by SABC Digital multimedia producer, Mr. Tsepi Somoshe. Tsepi, so a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Alicia. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And on the main desk, we do have political analyst, Mr. Levi Ndo, Professor Sipho Siepe, and media specialist, Mr. Dominic Mahlangu. He's also the director of the Legislature Monitor. Gentlemen, a very good morning to all three of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you, Alicia.
All right, you know we always have fun. Let's look at the big hashtags of this week. So what happened on social media this week?
Well, Alicia, on Monday, the biggest hashtag was Ntlemeza versus Mbalula. And this comes after former Hawks head arrived for work, even though police minister had appointed acting Hawks head Yolisa Matakata, and that generated a lot of commentary because as soon as police minister Mbalula
there was a manhunt for him for the car and the cell phone.
Yes, was made aware that Ntlemeza had reported for duty. Police minister instructed Mutso Patlane, acting National Police Commissioner, to recover the car and the cell phone, and that generated a lot of commentary. As you
what
can
were
see,
they saying?
As you can see on Twitter here, Mone Dilang says it's an absolute shame that crime fighting is playing second fiddle, while basically criminals are having fun because of this sped that is...
debacle, yeah.
Yes.
I'm interested in this picture. What's going on here, Tsepi?
Here, what it looks like, our police minister, Fikile Mbalula, is suffering from the Ntlemeza syndrome, and as you can see, he's getting
an injection shot. Let's see what the gentlemen have to say about this. Tom, what did you think about these developments?
No, for me, it's a typical South African element. You know, you can never keep them down. You know,
they
will find a way
to serious things. Yes. Professor Siepe?
Well, one of the things that the writers there are also saying is that it's important that we focus on the work at hand.
Yeah.
That the minister had made a decisive position and had expressed himself. So it was unfortunate that his position was becoming, as he put it himself, a movie, and the Meza Mbalola Mbu movie. And that becomes unfortunate because then the real issues should be dealt with. People applauded him for taking at least a position on this matter, but we must move on and concentrate on the things that we should be addressing.
Levi, a quick one?
Obviously, the police minister is to focus on the challenges facing the nation. True. But unfortunately now there are these kind of issues that are happening at a departmental level, and it's quite unfortunate, and it negatively affects us as a nation.
I just love this picture, though. Very interesting, and we thank you so much for that humor on the show today. Let's move on to the big one, the big hashtag of this week. What was the other big hashtag, Zapiso?
The other biggest hashtag this week was the nuclear deal that the Western Cape High Court had ruled that it was unconstitutional and unlawful, and that also generated a lot of commentary, I'm sure, from social media. Here we've got Aman saying a nuclear deal is not an anti-Zuma, even if it went Russia, but Westinghouse, Arriva, or any nuclear bidder from the West, it would still be illegal.
Pili Nzimande says, hashtag nuclear deal, e-tolls, you are next.
Yes, and Stembiso saying our kids' future nearly went to Dubai and Nkandla.
Gentlemen, what did you make of this? Levi, let's start with you.
Well, it's a reminder about the processes that are supposed to be followed by government. And I think government leaders have to take it very positively and say, there's an area where we have erred, and if that has to be corrected, it must be corrected.
Absolutely.
But the main principles of our constitution is about consultation, it's about following all the necessary processes, which were actually not followed at this stage.
Dom, there was a lot of noise about this nuclear deal. Some saying, I mean, where are we going to get the money to even have such a deal going through?
Yeah, I mean, the judgment comes just barely days after the new finance minister says that he's going to stick to the principles and will fund projects that we have money for. So for me, government should not take this as a negative. Any court judgment, you go and read and look through the reasons that the court advanced, why they found not in your favor, and then go and clear those aspects. I think South Africa, I mean, without being pro or against nuclear, we need to discuss how do we actually create a space where we generate power for the future. Because if South Africa is going to suffer again in terms of power generation, it's going to affect a lot of things. So nuclear and other forms of energy needs to be on the table. So for me, the judgment is not a bad decision, but it gives government that space to go and look at the entire processes again.
Absolutely, Prof.
Yeah, actually, what Dominic is saying is very important. Actually, both of them. It's that when you see the sound bites in the media, they are actually misleading. What the court says is that there is a process you must follow. Yes. But at the same time, it didn't go to the merits of whether you should have nuclear or not. But what is most important for us, we should not be ideological around this. We should actually be asking whether the decisions we take today are not going to change the future. And hence the notion of a mixed source of energy becomes very important, and there should be rational engagement around those issues.
Absolutely.
But the way it is actually put, because some people had almost put the idea that there's corruption in it. But what it does, rubbishing everything with corruption disempowers our ability to rationally engage with issues that are very important to this country now and in the future.
You see, that's why I love my three wise men. Let's go on to the final big hashtag of this week.
The final hashtag,
Freedom Day.
Yes, was Freedom Day, which was main event was held in KZN, where President Jacob Zuma was addressing the masses. Yeah. And as you can see here on Twitter, on your screens, we have a tweet from Carl saying, "Happy Freedom Day, people. Remember that freedom is defined by the individual, and there can be no freedom without responsibility."
Gentlemen, a very quick one. What did you make of the social media reactions to how we celebrate Freedom Day? Some people were saying, why do our white counterparts not celebrate the day? Dominic?
Yeah, no, South Africa is always divided when it comes to such national days. So it did not surprise me, to see those different engagements, especially on social media.
But a lot of people were saying we're not free. I think that was the general narrative. Professor?
Well, I think, first of all, we must cement and consolidate the gains. And the gains are first at an ideological level. What you are asking is about freedom. People say freedom from what? There was freedom from white oppression. So you can also understand that sometimes why some white people who are beneficiaries of the system may not see this freedom as their freedom. It is largely a black freedom because they come from a system that subjugated them. Then the next level that people are going to be asking, what is the content of that freedom? So we have a political freedom, we don't have a cultural freedom, we don't have an economic freedom. So what we do is that you must move step by step, consolidate and advance. And the questions that are being raised are about to advance this freedom.
All right, Sepi, so thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do tell our viewers where they can get all these stories and more that's going to be happening on our news front today.
Alicia, they can get this show and other shows on our YouTube channel by simply searching for SABC Digital News, or alternatively, they can go to www.sabc.co.za/news.
There it is. It's on your screen. You have no excuse. All right, we're going to take a quick ad break. And when we return, we discuss whether our president could be in grave danger of being assassinated. Stay tuned to Media Monitor.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 5:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
And we're back with Media Monitor. Now, one of the news highlights this week is, of course, the Hawks' arrest of a man who was allegedly plotting to assassinate prominent South African members, as well as politicians, including President Jacob Zuma. Elvis Ramosebudi appeared in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court for the first time on Friday and faced a charge of conspiracy to commit murder, and the case was postponed to enable him to get the services of a legal aid lawyer. Now, it's believed some snipers were going to be enlisted to carry out the assassinations of at least 19 targeted individuals. Let's find out more on this clip.
This is the alleged mastermind behind the assassination plot. He cuts a lonely figure in the dock as the charge was read out to him, continuously glancing at the packed public gallery. However, strangely, the investigating officer believes he might not be sane.
That it was not normal for a person to commit such an offense using his own personal bank account and going around to the companies.
More odd was his response to the magistrate's question.
Have you ever been admitted at any institution suffering mental illness in the past? I can't recall.
Call, he says. Considering the seriousness of the allegations involving members of the executive and reportedly the president, why is the state going ahead with the prosecution now when the man leading the investigation has reservations over the accused mental state?
The accused had a case to answer, but that does not remove the fact that as a state where we suspect that the accused needs to be referred for mental observation to do such. It doesn't stop us from doing that.
Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Prof, is there a case to answer to here?
Well, assassination is a serious business, and we must always take it seriously and respond accordingly. But we must also look at the issue. People who are engaged in that are highly sophisticated. these are not the people who are going to be writing to individuals, say, give me money because I want to deal with this. So on the face of it, I think we might be making a mountain out of the molehill. And I mean, I'm glad that even the investigating officer himself is beginning to question the sanity of his own suspect. Yeah. Because when I heard it, I just had nobody who is very serious in this business writes to companies, say, no, look, I know you guys don't like this one. Just give me 6 million. So I think the NPA is being overly cautious. And when you start acting this way, you might even tarnish your own and create unnecessary panic. But I do think that we do need to take seriously the protection of people who are influential and politically exposed, because it becomes a challenge, because there might be some people who may want to take advantage of taking people down. But on this one, I would like to say maybe the hunch that the investigative officer has might be a correct one.
Dominic, I mean, did you see that list? I mean, it's very interesting how actually the president's name is at the top of the list, and then there's a secondary list with more business people. So I really don't understand then. What do you think about this case?
No, for me, I mean, following from what Prof has just said, is that what is also intriguing is that he was not targeting one side of the debate in terms of white monopoly capital. Yeah. I mean, to put the president and others and also produce another list that targets those who are seen to be against white monopoly capital. Yeah. I mean, it's very much troubling, but maybe the good element out of it, even though we should not overstretch it, is that at least our intelligence officers were not caught napping, because of such individuals can be used by those who really, really want to create havoc in this country. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel pity for him, because of he actually did not follow the script, I mean, if you can put it that way, on how to plan an assassination. Because of he uses email, he was phoning people, and he had the so-called gathering, you know, to come and operationalize this plan. So, I mean, NPA, fine, they must follow each and every case that is brought before them. Yeah. But also police, they should not say that, no, we're going to ignore certain things, because of this can be used by others to actually do the real job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So whilst we can make jokes about it on social media and make fun, and also the Hawks, as the Prof was saying, it should not be discouraged by this. At least at the end of the day, we're able to hear and see what other people are plotting behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Levi, what do you read into this whole debacle?
Well, I think it's also informed by what is at play in the public discourse about issues that are happening, especially that relates to the state capture. But obviously, we don't take it very lightly when the lives of senior government officials are in danger. I listened to the spokesperson of the Hawks last week, saying that they've been following the activities of this individual since last year, somewhere in October. And they actually realized that there is consistency in terms of contacting certain individuals in order to make a donation, and in order to be able to have these assassinations successful. And maybe it might have come out to the public life much earlier, or it shouldn't have come out. But the reality of the matter is that when the lives of senior government officials are in danger, the state security has to act. But also, as Dominic has indicated, and Prof, it might also open up avenues for other people. If you don't act on issues like this one, others might also take advantage and say the state security doesn't take this kind of activities very seriously. Yeah, let's use them to attack government. So I think they must then develop new strategies to ensure that the protection not only of senior government officials but of every citizen is actually a priority. But
now, gentlemen, let's talk about this. We do know that there might be increased security for the names that are allegedly on the list now. The cost to state, if this is not necessarily a true threat, so to speak, Professor.
Yeah, it is better to on the side of caution.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, because if it happens and you are not taking it, you are taking it lightly, the damage to the republic will be far greater. We've had instances where presidents were assassinated and very senior people. I mean, if you take the United States, this is why the US, when the president of the United States moves, they make sure that they bring the gunships, they bring their own, because they know what it is like to lose the president. So it's very important. So it's a small price to pay to make sure that we keep the stability of this, because we don't know what the civil strife is in this country. And there's some people who play around with this democracy. But it is so easy for us to end up being like Rwanda. Because remember, if you look at some of those places where there was a civil strife, there was a lot of killings, people will tell you that, but the people were living together nicely. We never expected anything. So it's very important that South Africans must take this stability and social and political stability very seriously.
Levi?
Yes, obviously. Things that we take lightly sometimes has a potential of destroying the entire nation. And I think that is why, as Prof is saying, cautious measures, precautionary measures have to be taken by government, especially those that are in the security cluster, to ensure that the lives of ordinary citizens are at all times well protected. But more importantly, if there is a threat to the executive, serious cautions has to be taken so that we live in peace and harmony in the Republic.
You know, Dom, this is what I find interesting. Those companies that were contacted or individuals that were asked to be the so-called donators of funds, they're not the ones that raised this issue to the state. The state actually intercepted communications material. So what do you think about that? What does it say about those companies and individuals that were contacted?
It goes back to what I was saying, but I'm glad that at the moment, this case is out in the public and it's going through, it's being processed through our court system. Can you imagine if some of those companies or individuals actually warmed up to the idea to an extent that action was taken?
But their inaction, doesn't that signify that they were warming up to the idea?
No, I wouldn't go that far because of, you never know. Some of them simply gave this guy a hearing because of sometimes as a directors and executives, you do get people saying, can I see you? Can I do this? But I mean, at the end of the day, police had to act because of, as they say, the police, they say, the guy was being consistent in terms of contacting those individuals. But I'm glad that for now, there's no evidence that shows that there was money that was paid to him.
All right. Okay, Prof, did you want to say something?
Yeah, well,
quickly?
I mean, the other issue of people warming up to the idea is that they may listen to the fellow who gives them an idea that they may have entertained, and then they try to find some people who are more sophisticated. But what is important is that you have the security agencies that appear to be hard at work and to making sure that there is a following of any trail that suggests anything that may bring harm to the Republic.
And all that debacle with the bug biting certain people at the Hawks offices. Let's take a quick ad break, and after that...
The majority of black people are still economically disempowered and are dissatisfied with the economic gains from liberation.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
Violent protests broke out in the small towns of Coligny and Lichtenburg, both in the Ditsobotla local municipality in the northwest province this week. The latter was protesting against the lack of service delivery and are calling for the mayor, Daniel Buthelezi, to step down, while Coligny residents were protesting against the killing of a 12-year-old boy allegedly by white farmers. Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo has appointed a task team to probe the reasons for these protests. Let's find out what happened in this insert.
Mopping up operations as businesses continue to reel from protests which have engulfed the area since last Friday. The situation was relatively calm in most areas, with residents counting their losses. The R503 road linking Lichtenburg, Coligny and Ottosdal has now been open for traffic, but a large police contingent has been deployed to the area to monitor the situation. Many have lost their livelihood in the crossfire.
Where I'm staying, I'm renting. The students are going by school to pay the school, all the fees. I don't know how I'm going to recover because I was depending on this shop.
Because it's a small community, most of the businesses are small businesses. They don't have any insurance to recover from this situation.
Schools and other essential services remain closed. Some residents say this situation could have been avoided.
If everything was handled properly, the investigation into what happened, if that was dealt with promptly, they should have known that could erupt into a political issue because it's a white-black situation.
Now we don't know what will end up happening with our jobs. What will happen with our children who are at the universities if we lose our jobs?
Meanwhile, police say the two men arrested in connection with the boy's murder will appear before the Coligny Magistrates Court on Friday. The provincial government has set up a task team to deal with the situation in Ditsobotla. I'm Oleboheng Khosilinzwe in the Ditsobotla municipal area in the northwest.
Dominique, what do you make of these protests? I mean, two different issues here. There's some people protesting for service delivery. The other people are protesting for a 12-year-old boy that was killed allegedly by the white farmers.
No. The deeper issue in such towns is that the economic structure has not changed for years. Yeah. So we might be sitting here in Johannesburg, it's the urban area. But there are vast areas in this country where things have not changed. True. I mean, you might find that government is putting in services, but the economic structure is still intact. So hence, you get residents in that area, who are willing to take to the streets to voice us, to say that we are here, these are the injustices that we are facing. Mm-hmm. My hope is that the Minister of Police and through the acting police commissioner, they will send senior police officers to do proper investigation, especially when it comes to the killing of that 12-year-old. Yeah. Because if you don't want the case to fizzle out in court, because it will create even more problems. That's true. But also the NPA must make sure that since the judge in the case has excused himself, the NPA must also send senior people there so that this case is dealt with openly and professionally. Because if there are going to be mistakes, I can assure you that that town will burn again.
Levi, what do you think is the core of the problem in the area?
Well, I think in South Africa, where we, on numerous occasions, on an ongoing basis, we're getting a lot of farmers killing or abusing black people. And you'll recall that some few months ago, there was a situation in Limpopo where a black person was shot and they said the farmer mistaken that person for a water. There is a person that was put in a coffin in Mpumalanga. And I think we need an approach where now the farmers themselves must sit down and say, we're creating a lot of damage, especially to the black community, but also at the same time, we're also inviting violence to our doors. Because when you hear of farm attacks, there's a lot of concerns that are raised from different sectors. But when black people are being killed or abused by farmers, the outcry is quite minimal. But when black people retaliate, there's a lot of concerns that is being raised. But I think it's a racial issue, and I think it's up to those that are the perpetrators of these activities to sit down and say, maybe we need to change our approaches. I think South Africa has moved much quicker to deal with the race factor. And those that are still seen as or participating in racial activities are actually rubbing the same wounds, the racial wounds that have been existing.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite unfortunate. Political parties must also come in to assist, especially where farmers themselves are active participants, so that they must develop a better approach. There seems to be no respect of the law. If someone is found having stolen something, you don't take the law into your own hands, you report that person to the law enforcement agencies.
Absolutely.
And the farmers in South Africa don't do that. And that is an invitation of violence, which we don't want.
You know, speaking of political parties, we had an interview with Mr. Groenewald in of course, Coligny, who was speaking to one of our journalists. He completely blamed the police. He says the approach to the matter was insufficient. And he says that they, as farmers, they have the right to protect themselves and their businesses. What do you read to that then, Professor?
Well, I'm glad that Levi brought in the issue of political parties.
Yes.
Because what are our challenges, as Dominic puts it, are structural. Unless you address the structure that informed what we have today,
absolutely,
everything becomes irrelevant. So that's the first thing that we needed to do. And unfortunately, our political parties are obsessed with finding fault with one individual rather than dealing with structural issues. In this country, last year we had over 2,000 protests, and those protests had no name called Zuma in it. And yet we are not talking about how to deal with it. So when you want to talk about saving South Africa, you save South Africa from even our own behavior, wherever we are, in the Dorpies, townships, in the little towns. But what you find that the common denominator there is that are structural issues. So until you deal with the structural issues, you're not going to resolve these issues. And what I also find amazing, or actually not it's predictable, is the silence of the parties, groupings that are always out there. I mean, if you look at these racial incidences, where is the Nelson Mandela Foundation?
Yeah.
Where is the De Klerk Foundation? Where is the Helen Suzman Foundation? Where are the Freedom Under Law?
Boy was
but
killed.
what you see, these structural issues, they make sure that we don't address them. The challenge in South Africa goes back to the whole issues of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And what we need, if you want to talk about saving South Africa, is to make sure that we address these issues. But we are diverted from dealing with these issues always successfully. And hence we deal with all issues that are irrelevant. Whether it's at universities, the young people are telling us, and when you listen to young people at university, talk about the decolonization of education, they talk about insourcing and all that. And when you look at all those things, those are all structural issues that deal with the issue of economy, with the exclusion of black people, but that is not the obsession of the media, it's not the obsession of analysts. We don't talk about those issues because we have been captured by a narrative that says, don't talk about this, talk about only this other issue.
Dominic?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with the Prof, because we've tended to personalize issues in this country. I mean, you talk about poverty, they will want a face to blame instead of dealing with the core issue. That's why I say that we might be sitting here in the nice studios in Johannesburg, but I can tell you, life outside in many of our towns has remained the same. Yeah. And those are the key issues that we need to be obsessing about. Because if you go to Lichtenburg, I mean, when you drive across Northwest, because of Northwest, the way it's structured, it's not one big, area. It's little towns, little towns. And I can tell you that the commercial media or any other media, we still don't have the muscle to have a journalist in each and every of those towns. But I can tell you the stories that are in those towns. Black people are still treated as second-class citizens in this country. And hence, when they rise up, we try to find faults to say, no, they're not supposed to do this. If white farmers say that they've got every right to protect themselves, what about the rights of those who are being victimized?
I was about to say, yes. Levi?
Yeah, well, it's clearly an issue about the structural aspects. And also at the same time, the behavior or the abuse and exploitation of black people, especially in the farms, has not occupied a primary space in the South African media sector. And that's another area of great concern. The majority of people that are working in farms remain exploited. They have no access to basic services. They are also not properly educated because of the conditions which they live in. And that's one area where you need all of us as South Africans to say, let's sit down and address the plight of these people. And unfortunately, that is not what we're actually concerned with. We're concerned with other irrelevant issues.
All right. Well, that's all we have time for on that topic. It seems like former finance minister is endorsing Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa as the next president. We delve into that straight after this ad break. Stay tuned.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
And we're back. Former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has come out in full support of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. In an interview with CNN earlier this week, Gordhan said of Ramaphosa, in quotes, he has spoken truth to power, if you like, at difficult times and has demonstrated he is a leader of great mettle and would serve South Africa well into the future, close quote. The interviewer said tongues wagging across the whole country, with many saying that the former minister is now endorsing Ramaphosa as the next president. Former AU chair Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is seen as the preferred presidential candidate as she has the backing of the ANC Women's League, the so-called Premier League within the ANC, alongside the ANC Youth League. Campaign time, Prof?
Yeah,
so early.
Let's at least accept that people have a right to expressing themselves in terms of who they support.
True.
And for us to pretend that Pravin is not going to support Ramaphosa, it would be foolhardy. The Deputy President himself had expressed himself to say, I was unhappy with this person's removal.
Yeah.
This, so you could actually see this as quid pro quo, that if you're going to stand publicly and support me, I should also do the same. But what some people would also find problematic, first is what appears to be the trend by the former finance minister. You know, when you've been dismissed, you should not show yourself to be so unhappy that you immediately start campaigning against a position that is taken by somebody else. And there are some people who also are saying, and when you begin to do it to the international community, you are also getting to a space where some people are very comfortable about the affairs of the ANC being influenced by external forces.
Yeah.
But here you are standing up there, inviting the external forces to say, this is the man you must back, and who speaks truth to power and all the type of, because other people would argue that there have been instances where they would have thought that the deputy president should have taken a position, but he has not done so. But that is beside the point. The point is the behavior of a former minister. But what it also says, it gives credence to those who are saying, you see his behavior. The president was actually right to get rid of him, because he's the only a minister who has been fired, who has been actively engaged in what appears to be the anti-President Zuma posture. And I don't think it is actually good for Ramaphosa to have that. But I must say, I hasten to say, at least I was very pleased to see the former, the deputy president and the president at the Freedom Rally. I know you have that slot later.
Yeah.
Because what is also important is that members of the ANC must accept the right to differ without becoming enemies.
Absolutely.
That, that which strengthens the organization is this difference of opinion, where ultimately people may be able to judge that this opinion or this perspective is more superior in the advancement of the conditions of ordinary people.
Dom?
Now, my take about it is that the ANC will be rolled over by outside events. I mean, ANC cannot behave as if it's you know, the Vatican. When they go and appoint the Pope, they go into a secret room there and lock the door. But also, the ANC is no longer in exile, where they needed to protect whoever comes into leadership for being assassinated. Yeah. I think now is the right time that they start to loosen up that process. I mean, we were speaking earlier with Prof before the show to say that how does the ANC move, you know, into a space where now it takes people into their own confidence about its own processes. Because of it doesn't mean that when the ANC opens up the debate and say, let our people campaign openly, it weakens the organization. In fact, it makes the policies of the ANC even more popular because of you'll have different candidates, you know, campaigning on the very same policies that the ANC is advancing. So my take is that the former finance minister, for him being in that show of CNN, it also it's an extension of this frustration within the ANC. That is why other people will end up even using other forms of media, even outside media, to extend the campaigning platform. So in my view is that the ANC needs to look seriously at how it opens up the space. Because of by doing what is called the town hall campaigning, it actually enriches the debate and also makes the man on the street to say, that man spoke about this, you know, yesterday. I like what he says, but I think that the next candidate is weak when it comes to this. By the end of the process, we'll have a better person who has engaged with the South African public, other than the only delegates of the ANC in December who are going to say we're going to make a determination.
Yeah.
So they must open up the space. Yeah.
Very interesting that, you know, there's been talks that have been ongoing, policy discussion documents, and I think the leadership issue is one of those that the ANC has proposed that there needs to be some changes. But Liva, what did you make of this?
Well, I think one must acknowledge the fact that the ANC has a very tight calendar this year.
Yeah.
And something quite unfortunate is that the members of the ANC at all levels are preoccupied with the elective conference that is coming in December, whilst the ANC is supposed to firstly go to the policy conference and the consultative conference.
Yeah.
And what is quite more concerning and worrying is the institutionalized factions within the ANC, that branches, provinces, and regions of the ANC are defined along certain factions, that this region belongs to individual A, this branch or region belongs to this individual. But more worrying is that we have got members of the ANC and some occupying positions in the ANC who are not concerned about ANC policies, who are concerned about who is going to emerge come the conference in December. And I think they are allowing themselves to be diverted from real issues, because policies are the ones that must determine the right person that must actually lead the party. Yeah. And unfortunately, the ANC is actually allowing that to happen. And that is quite unfortunate. But also, the ANC says nominations have not been opened. But unfortunately, the SG or the leadership of the ANC seem to have lost the key, and the debate is out. If they think they're closing it elsewhere, and the succession is actually in the open, and people are actually campaigning openly. But what is lacking very seriously is that there is no that leadership role that is played by the leadership to say, we haven't opened succession, and let us deal with those that are campaigning openly, because we haven't opened it as the leadership of the ANC.
Well, you know, Pravin also said something very interesting in that interview. He said the ANC could lose the 2019 elections if things continue this way. Prof, a quick one from you.
Well, I think that's now the new boogeyman. You know, the ANC always had to deal with fears. I think what we need in this country is that we need a ruling party or a leading party to be able to engage with issues that affect the people.
Yeah.
The obsession, if you become obsessed with people, you are more likely to stay longer in power. But if you become obsessed with boogeymen and all that, I think somehow we are forgetting why the ANC exists. And the ANC exists primarily to deal with the issue of liberation, political, economic, and cultural. And that's what they need to focus themselves on rather than all these fears. Because once you get into a fear, you become trapped by that fear, and that fear might actually become a reality. But for now, concentrate on the people, what is good for the people, and if other parties also do the same, that is good. What we need in this country is that those of us who are concerned about politics, it's really not so much about the ANC, it's more about how are we doing in terms of the conditions of the majority of our people.
All right, okay. Well, that's where we leave it on that story. After the break, will Jacob Zuma be attending tomorrow's Workers' Day celebrations? COSATU says yes. We're going to find out after the break.
Did you know the big hole digging started in 1871 and ended on the 14th August 1914? The hole produced 2,722 kgs of diamonds. However, one diamond as huge as 490 carat of stone found in the open prior 1868 gave them the interest to dig. Extracted from 22.5 million tons of soil. Today, the hole sits at a breathtaking 214 meters deep. Kimberley Big Hole attracts tourists from all over the world, taking a vintage tram past the city, then cycling around the Big Hole.
Two main COSATU affiliates want clarity on why Zuma is invited to the May Day rally when COSATU had declared no confidence in him. COSATU in Gauteng had announced that President Jacob Zuma won't be speaking at their May Day workers' celebrations. This after the Trade Union Federation called for the president to resign. The SA Democratic Teachers Union SATU, SA Municipal Workers Union SAMU, as well as National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union NEHAU have also joined calls to exclude Zuma from speaking. Instead, ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe was asked to speak. Let's find out more in this insert.
Like we said, there were about some affiliates expressing a feeling and a sentiment that since we have a standing resolution that the President of the Republic should step down, is it appropriate then for us to welcome him to come and address our events? There was a fear from some of the affiliates that this will send conflicting messages to the public and to the membership. But we are guided by the resolutions. Unfortunately, the resolution did not stipulate that not only do we expect the president to step down, but also that we ban him from addressing our events going forward.
Here's news just in this morning, gentlemen. Trade Federation COSATU believes it was dealt a rotten hand after supporting President Zuma and his camp's ascendancy to leadership at the NC's 2007 National Conference in Polokwane. And it regrets being lured into complacency and allowing neoliberal policies to continue. Is this the end of the tripartite alliance, Prof?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, it's quite nonsensical for the partners to say that and isolate one person.
Yeah.
Because the policy that the president is pursuing are policies of the ANC. And if the ANC fails, then ANC collectively must assume the blame.
Yes.
Because those are members who are members of cabinet are also members of these organizations. So if you're going to find fault with everybody. So the COSATU may have actually put itself in the corner. And you can see logic in what they are saying, that we have asked him to step down, and we have tried to almost make people to buy into the story. Then you invite him again, that you are sending conflicting messages. So one can actually see that. But what it also shows, it's why it's always never wise to jump into a position where you want to dictate of what other structures should do. Because if the ANC were to do the same, to say, you have the Secretary General of the SACP, we do not like him, remove him. It would not be fair. The same way if the ANC were to demand that this Tumu must be replaced. So there must be also respect for positions. You have a right to express your wishes, but you cannot dictate on another structure. And secondly, you also need to, there's another reality. Whatever people want to make of President Zuma, he is still a person who enjoys a lot of support.
Yeah.
That's why Dominic was also correct to say, when you talk about COSATU, which COSATU?
Yeah.
But what is also good, which is emerging from COSATU, is that there's a certain element of discipline that says if resolutions are made, we are not going to allow a lot of noise to undermine the resolutions that we've actually made. So we had agreed that the ANC will deploy its people, and these are the people that the ANC has provided, and we're going to stick with it. But the long and short of it is that there must be respect for fraternal organizations, where you don't dictate, but also don't assume that just because some of you feel strongly about an individual, that is a view of all the workers.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you will not be seeing the president addressing stadia that is filled to capacity, the tents that take up to 10,000 people, or there was a celebration where when he enters, you see that there is a warm reception. So people must not confuse their intimate views as a reflective, or they must not universalize their perspective and impose it on others.
Levi?
Yeah, well, this takes us back to the alliance. That in the alliance, that is the ANC, COSATU, and the SACP, the leader of the alliance is the ANC. And there has been a trend that has been going on, wherein in the May Day or in the rallies, the ANC will always deploy the president to go and address. But also, we also have to locate this in the current situation in the country, where there are a number of calls for President Zuma to resign. But also, if you remember the special conference of COSATU in Midrand, before the succession in the ANC was opened, COSATU came up very clearly 2 years back, and they said, we want Cyril Ramaphosa to become the next president. That to me was to say, we are actually not in support of President Zuma anymore.
Yeah.
But the voice that is talking about President Zuma to be removed from office, it's gaining momentum. It might not be having sufficient support, but that voice is still in existence. But I think it is up to those that are in the alliance to ensure that they keep the alliance intact, so that if they are still in agreement with the ANC, then the ANC must continue to lead.
Tom, I just want to ask you this question. Do you think then these divisions within COSATU not coming into the party as a unified front is going to just send their members straight to Vavi's Saftu?
Yeah, man, there is that element.
The Prof agrees.
Yeah, people are saying that this shows, the deep divisions within COSATU. Just to recap, we've been in the space before.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why the ANC is not using the past in order to analyze the present and the future. Back in 2005, 2006, 2007, we're in the same space, and it's happening now. But unfortunately now it's happening on a weekly basis. All those things that used to happen in 2005, 6, and 7. I mean, I remember when President Thabo Mbeki fired the former Deputy Minister of Health. Yeah. She came out openly and said that I'm going back to my branch to campaign to change the leadership. And how the former COSATU president was removed from office. Yeah. We are in that space. And now Stomo Dlamini finds himself also now in that space of where does he side with the president or does he side with those who are saying that the president must go? So my challenge is that actually the May Day event might be rescued. If COSATU is big enough to say, or is man enough to say, look, let's allow the president to come and talk at our rally, so that we also question him about the issues that we have raised about his leadership in government. But now to come with this political gymnastics to say, no, we invited the president as the president of the ANC, not the president of the country that we want him to be removed. It sends a very bad message, and then it shows that COSATU is in that space where they are not sure where they are standing.
All right, my three wise men today, Professor Sipho Siepe, Mr. Levi Ndoro, as well as Mr. Dominic Mahlangu, analyzing all the big news of this week, crammed into 1 hour, and we call it Media Monitor. Thank you so much for choosing us. I'm back on top of the hour with AM News. Stay tuned.